Can you please state your full name as it is recorded on your birth certificate, your date of birth and place of birth?
Clyde Edward Wood the third. Let me say date of birth, place of birth, date of birth. March 21, 1963, Centerville, Iowa.
What branch of the military did you join?
All right, let's see. I enlisted in the Iowa National Guard in 1981. So I have served as an enlisted man in the National Guard. I've been an officer in the Army Reserve and on active duty in the Army. But I would say my time in the sense of maybe as a veteran was the 4 years I was enlisted in the Marine Corps. So I've been in the Army and the Marines.
Why did you join the military? Was it peer or family influence?
I have been fascinated by the military since I was little. I can remember the event. My father took me to see the movie Patton, and I didn't want to do anything for the rest of my life. That's all I wanted to be. I wanted to be a soldier, which they all hoped I grew out of, but I never did. And I thought I was going to be a 20-year retiree. I just realized at some point that certain aspects of military life just weren't for me. I actually found out now that I'm a better teacher and I enjoy it more than I'd have been a mediocre soldier, and I don't want to be a mediocre or anything. So.
When did you join? When did you start?
Well, enlisted in '81. I was a high school senior, and I joined what was called a simultaneous membership program, which was I was in the National Guard, but I was also in ROTC at the same time. So I went through, and because I'd been to basic training, I didn't have to go through the first 2 years of ROTC. I skipped right into the 2-year advanced years of ROTC. So I was commissioned as a reserve officer. I was 20 years old in a month. I was just barely almost a teenage lieutenant. So, but Marines, I enlisted in the Marines in 1989. I got out of the Army and I was unemployed for about a year, and I decided I wasn't done sort of exploring and doing the military thing, so I enlisted in the Marines.
So why did you pick the Marines?
Well, I'd already been in the Army, so I don't as much anymore, but I had the movie Jaws absolutely spoiled any idea of swimming in the I still can't. Just scares the crap out of me. So the Navy was kind of out. I really wasn't that intrigued by the Navy. Air Force, I didn't see what you do in the Air Force other than be a pilot. My eyes weren't good enough to be a pilot. I found out later I could be a backseat or do some other functions in a plane, but I didn't know at the time. So, also I just enjoyed the Marines were the esprit, the reputation was very appealing. So I joined the Marines.
What was your job?
I was I was an infantry. I just joined. No, did I join this? No, I joined as a light armored crewman, which was infantry, but it's an 8-wheeled armored car and a light armored vehicle, LAV. And now that I think about it, that was on my list of. But I went to infantry school. I could have been in infantry, but I was assigned what's called 0313 0313 LAV Crewman.
Can you tell me what your life was like before you joined the military?
Well, I graduated from college. I already had a bachelor's degree in history. Again, for the Marines. Before the Army, I was in high school, but before the Marines, I was unemployed. I had worked temporary jobs in a factory, just at a book bindery. So I was in the process of applying for a position with the CIA, and I finally got turned down by them. And that's when I said, okay, if I don't make the CIA job, then I'm going to enlist in the Marines. So it's kind of floating. I thought about going back to graduate school at the same time as well.
How was basic training? And what all did you do?
I've had the pleasure of being to 2 basic trainings and an ROTC summer camp. So I've had to endure that twice. Not a lot of people have had to go through it twice. I went through it. Marines are the only service, as far as I know, that won't let prior service just enter. You can go in the Army if you've been in the other services without having to go through basic training again. But going to the Marines, you have to go through basic training. So I went through Army basic training, then Marine Corps boot camp. So, that answer your question?
Kind of.
What was the question? What was it?
What all did you learn during your basic
Oh,
training?
what did I learn?
In any of them.
Learned a lot. You learn how
I
to
know.
salute and march and.
I mean, I know how some people, they have to take apart 50 calibers and put them together blindfolded in 30 seconds.
Not at basic. You don't. Not that kind of heavy a gun. Rifle, the M16. You had to take that apart and put together. And not blindfolded. You just had to do it. Both the Army and the Marines. I get that asked a lot. Which one was tougher? Well, I went to Army Basic in '81 and Marine Boot in '89, and I was 26 years old by then. So the Army at the time was still doing physical training in boots and utes. Boots, and you just took your top off, kept a t-shirt on, and you exercised. The Marines were doing gym shorts, t-shirts, and running shoes. So in a sense, that wasn't quite like combat. Maybe the Army, but the Army also had things that were. Well, for instance, I think there were 40 of us, a normal sized platoon with one drill sergeant, and there's different nomenclature. And we'd get left with a corporal who wasn't even drill trained when he went home for the evenings and stuff like that. But the Marines, there were 70 of us in our company, in our series, I think they called it. But we had 4 drill instructors. So at night, you always had a drill instructor. They slept with us. I mean, slept in a different room in the same barracks. But you were never not in the company of a drill instructor in the Marine Corps. But in the Army, there were sort of, it didn't seem like they ran very efficiently. It seemed like there was a lot of downtime. There was a lot of just waiting. In the Marine Corps, it was just terribly efficient in terms of, there was never really any downtime.
How long did it take before you actually were involved in any kind of combat?
The only combat I saw was when I was in the Marines in the Gulf War. Well, I was in Somalia and there was some shots, and we came close to firing at some people, but not combat, just random sniper fire in the air. The Gulf War, not a lot of people saw combat, from my understanding, because it was just over. I think they call it the 100-hour war, some people call it. But I fired my machine gun. They shot at me. I saw an RPG round. I mean, there was some artillery fired. I've told people I had the perfect war because none of my close friends were killed. Some people in my company died. I knew them, so there was some grief. But none of my close friends were killed. I was never wounded. I was never hurt. I have no PTSD or any kind of scars. I have a little bit of survivor guilt, but I've been in combat, on the other hand. I mean, there was actually, they're trying to kill me, I'm trying to kill them aspect to it, but nothing so dramatic that I have nightmares. I have no nightmares. I had the perfect war. Been through it all, endured it, but nothing happened to me.
You said you were stationed in Somalia. How long were you there?
Just a month. We were in Somalia for a month. We arrived way before the Black Hawk Down movie stuff. That happened months after we left. We were just there for the movement of emergency food supplies, and there was a platoon of us, 4 vehicles, in the village of Bardera, which is kind of the largest. It's maybe like a regional center in southwestern Somalia, pretty close to the Ethiopian border, maybe 30 to 60 miles from Ethiopia, and Kenya, right up in the corner of Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia. And we just protected. There were a lot of the clans, the warlords would steal the grain from the villages, and our function, which was, I don't know, it wasn't silly, but we would guard the village. We would guard the grain convoys, huge trucks stacked with grain, and my lieutenant would usually run in front, and I would run in the tail end of the column, and we just made sure that nobody stole it. But as soon as we left, the warlords would come in the night or the next night and steal all their grain, so it was almost worthless.
Was there anywhere else that you were stationed?
In the Army, I just went to Germany for a year. My dad died and requested a compassionate reassignment. They sent me back to Des Moines. Actually, was stationed for some of my active duty time in Des Moines, Iowa. In the Marines, I went to boot camp in San Diego, was at Camp Pendleton, and I was in Saudi Arabia for the Gulf, Somalia for a month, Okinawa. I did 2 tours of Okinawa, and then I took a Westpac float, Western Pacific float. So there's always like one of the, I think this, is that 7th Fleet? I think it's 7th Fleet. It's the 4th Amphibious Squadron, and Westpac is just, there's a battalion of Marines on board 4 ships, and I was on board the Germantown, and we just cruised. We hit Hong Kong and Indonesia and Australia. We took part in the 50th anniversary, I think, of the landings at Saipan. We didn't land, but our ship was there for the reenactment, I guess you'd call it. Is that it? Yeah, I think that's right.
How did you adjust to the different cultures that you experienced?
No, I thought it was fascinating. The 4 years I was in the Marines might be the best 4 years of my life, in the sense that I've never quite relived, or I presently going through a certain amount of, gee, I wish I'd never got out. Sort of like grass is always greener sort of syndrome. But dealing with different culture, I just enjoyed wherever we went. I thought Indonesia was fascinating. I loved Australia. Okinawa, we were kind of restricted because of a lot of tension between the Okinawans and the Marines. I didn't blend. And Camp Schwab on Okinawa was way removed from most of the people on Okinawa, way much further on the south part. It took an amazing amount of time to get from Schwab down to Kin. I can't remember that town back down. Hong Kong was very interesting. I didn't really care for the people in Hong Kong. I thought they were. I can't blame them. I mean, it's a huge place, but some friends of mine and I made a bet over who would actually, what people from Hong Kong would actually acknowledge your existence without being prompted first. I think we put a $10 bet on that one. But Indonesia, the people of Indonesia were just absolutely fantastic. And I loved Germany when I was in the Army. I wish I could have stayed longer. I didn't get a chance to.
And how did the different climates affect you?
The desert was hot. Yeah, it was also cold, though, in the wintertime. I remember we burnt everything in the wintertime. It was amazing, because we tried to reflect on back like 6 months earlier how hot it had been. I remember one time I was wearing black boots before they got desert boots. And I was just standing there. So I dug 2 holes and put my feet in and just sort of kicked sand on them. So if you took a picture of me, they'd be like no feet. It was just my legs. And I buried my feet into the sand just to keep the sun off those black boots, because the sun was baking those boots. And there was a lot of flies. I was amazed by the amount of flies. And I remembered I'd been reading a biography of Saddam Hussein at the time. And there was a quote in him. He said that something to the effect of, the devil created, or God's curse on the earth was Jews and flies. I didn't understand the Jew part, but the fly part, that I got. It's like, yeah, these flies are, wow, my God, they're annoying. There'd always be flies on you. If you just laid here, there'd be flies on you. If you moved, the flies would fly up. And as soon as you stabilized again, the flies would all land on you again. And you just got sort of used to always having flies on you. I hated it for quite some time. And Okinawa wasn't so bad. I told people before that my barracks room, they put us in barracks at night, so we didn't see. And I'll never forget, I was rooming with Corporal J.J. Jennings, is a good buddy of mine. And we went over to the window. First thing, J.J. had already been over to Okinawa before. I opened the window and just went whoosh. And I was like, because it was a lagoon with a coral reef. And I was thinking, people pay big money to have this kind of view, and I'm being stationed here with this awesome, We'd catch a bit of monsoons. We'd get hit by monsoons. Monsoons were, I was in super typhoon market. They don't call them well, the monsoon's different. We get hit by the tail of the monsoon, but we'd also get typhoons. And I was in Super Typhoon Marguerite, which is like a Cat 5 hurricane. It just destroyed the building across the street from us. But we had a lot of fun, just open up the windows, and the floors were waxed, so the water would get on the floors. And we just put on gym shorts and just go running down the hallway and just sort of slide on our bellies or backs or something. Drunk, because we were confined to the barracks for like 2 or 3 days. There'd be like Typhoon Yellow and then Typhoon Red. And from Yellow, we were confined to the barracks. Well, the typhoon didn't hit for 2 or 3 more days. We would just get all the chips and alcohol we could possibly carry. And it was just 1 3 or 4 day just drunken fest. Germany was foggy. Germany was very foggy. I'll never forget how foggy. It was always foggy in Germany. Drizzly, but beautiful. And then, of course, I was stationed in 29 Palms for the 4 years I was in the Marines. So, again, I was in the desert. So, my aunt lived in Huntington Beach, which was on the Pacific coast. I've had my fill of sand. I could care less if I ever see sand again. So, people talk about going to Myrtle Beach. I'm like, sand, more sand. I can't do it.
How has being in the military affected you socially? And do you still communicate with your former military friends?
Oh, yeah, Facebook. I'm on Facebook, and Facebook's great for, really get in touch. I've told stories. I've told my students stories about different people, and it's fun to get a hold of them again after years, look them up, try to find them, know what they're doing, what they've done with their lives, their kids, and that they've gotten as fat as I have, and has it changed me? When I first got out, I stayed Marine. Like for instance, when I was on active duty, every Thursday night was field day night, which meant when we got off work at like 4 in the afternoon, we had to go to our rooms in the barracks, pull every item of furniture out of the room, and then clean that room from head to, because we had inspection Friday morning. So it had to be dust-free, dirt-free. We'd strip the floor, wax and mop it, and then put somebody would basically give up a sheet, and we'd have like a sheet that just took you from the door to the bathroom, so you didn't walk on the floor. And my job was always the toilet. I always did the showers and the toilets and the bathroom. The other 2 guys always did the floors and the dusting, and they did most of the furniture moving, and I would clean the bathroom. I had to unscrew the drain plate and brasso it. And what I'm driving at is that when I got out, I continued to do field day night every Thursday night when I was a civilian for a couple of years. And then I finally just then it became, instead of the whole house, it became a room. And then every Thursday I do a room. I find that I still, for the most part, walk like I march, I think. I put my head down sometimes, but usually walk pretty much straight up. And, I was telling somebody the other day, I don't know if the military really made me, as much as I got a little bit of claustrophobia, but I don't like to be any place where people are behind me. I don't like to be seated with people behind me. I don't like to be seated inside of, I want to be on the aisle, and I want to be in the corner, which has caused me some grief with people getting irritated with me. I was like, what do you want? I'm sitting here. So, I think that's maybe a military thing as well.
How do you feel about war now that
Well, I was fascinated by it. I mean, as a military historian, I'm a history professor here at the college, and I've always been, like I said, I've been fascinated by the military since I was a kid, and I could imagine not being in a war. And in fact, even at my age, I wish somehow that I'd been in to go to Iraq and Afghanistan, even though I'm aware that you get killed, you get torn to pieces. I'm not as, I won't say forgiving. I don't have quite as much patience for a lot of young men with a lot of machismo as maybe I was when I was, because I see myself as that young man, but I try to be forgiving of it, but it just annoys me to just see certain guys with this kind of swagger that's like, you just don't get it. Even though, again, I've not saw, Somalia was kind of bad in the sense of a lot of people dying of starvation, but again, I've not been scarred, but yet I've seen enough to go, okay, I had enough. I'm done. I experienced it. Like I said, perfect war. I experienced it. I can say I've been in combat. It's like, let's not push it any further. I'm good. I'm good.
So if you could, would you go back to the military?
Yeah, I mean, if it could. I'm overweight. I got health issues, and I'm fat, and they wouldn't take me now. But the grass is always greener. Like I said, I mean, I remember when I was in. I knew I liked being a Marine. I liked being in the Army to a degree. I really do sort of connect better with the Marines than I do the Army. The esprit the reputation really gets into your soul. When I was in, I kept thinking about, do I want to do this for, 13, 15 more years, whatever it was, or get out, and I got out. Oh, the other one is I was hoping to meet a nice woman, and the women around Marines were, I don't know how to say that, but out in 29 Palms, let's put it that way, out in 29 Palms, there wasn't a lot of single women, so maybe I'd get moved to another base where you'd be closer, but I figured I'm not going to meet anybody as long as I got this haircut, so, and of course now, 20 years later, still haven't met anybody. That's my own fault, but, no, yeah, I'd like to. That's a regret of my life. Not so much that I left active duty. I try to live my life without regrets, but I have one regret now, and that's that I did not at least stay in the reserves, so the Guard and Reserves. It didn't have to be the Marines, but just I wish to God I had stayed in the Guard or the Reserves.
How did you handle everyday stress, if you had any?
Well, I had stress. I had stress. What I find more is that I don't have stress now. I had stress when I was in the Marines, and I think that's one of the reasons, again, I got out. It's just, I hated marching. When I mean marching, not drill and ceremonies marching, I mean full pack rifle out into the desert marching. Couldn't stand it. I'm a slow walker, naturally, and to me it was just, several hours of misery. And the idea of still, if I ever shifted, if they told me you can stay in LAVs for the rest of your career, I'd have stayed. But I knew at some point I was going to have to go on and be leg infantry, and I was going to have to march and walk, and that did not appeal to me in the least. So, what's the question again?
How did you handle everyday stress?
I don't really remember how I handled it. I mean, I didn't drink a lot. I drank, but I didn't drink more than, I don't think I was an alcoholic. Didn't smoke. I think, I don't know, there's just sort of attitude that this too shall pass, and try to find the humor. I tried to find the humor in pretty much anything. So, laughed a lot, and I still laugh about a lot of stuff that happened, but I don't really know how much I dealt with it back when I was in. Like I said, I'm more amazed about a lot of stuff that now I would consider. I'm now to the point, it's been so long, 20 years later, that I'm finding the little things like parking. Parking annoys the hell out of me. And it's like, are you kidding me? Are you really stressing about parking? I mean, damn, man. I mean, you've seen done worse than this, and your parking spot was taken. I mean, get over yourself. I'm starting, it's been long enough that the small aspects of my life now are starting to get a little annoying, but 10 years ago, anything about my life since the service has been like, it doesn't matter. What I'm going to do is shave my head and make me join the Marine Corps. It's like,
how did you keep in touch with your family and friends back home?
Letters. As a historian, it's amazing to see, and not really be aware completely this transition to email, for instance, and IMs and texts. It was handwritten letters. And I was tickled that in the Gulf, because you're kind of in a combat zone, you didn't have to use stamps. You just write free postage in the right-hand corner and send it off. I was writing to everybody. I wrote to a girl I had a crush on in Scotland. That was one of my favorite. I just sent it to her name, her city, Scotland. And I got it back in about a month. She wrote me back, and we dated for like a year, just on this, because I thought I was going to die. I was writing to everybody. So, but I remember I also wrote a letter. The back of the communications variant of an LAV has 3 little stations for the radio operators to sit. And I had 3 guys asking me to write to their girlfriends. Would you write to my girlfriend? At least tell me what to say to my girlfriend to really get her to really like me or something. So I had these 3 guys sit down, and then I stood behind him, and I was Cyrano de Bergerac. I just dictated 3 identical letters and made sure they all wrote in their own handwriting. And just sort of went off in this crazy, my best attempt at Cyrano de Bergerac. I always get a chuckle out of that. And I guess it was successful because like a month or so later, the guys were like, "Oh, that letter, she loved it. Oh my God!" So letters was. Now there were phones. If you could get to a phone, but the lines for payphones. In fact, I've shown people outside of like a basic training base. There'll be banks of telephones. It used to be, and there'd be 4 or 5 guys deep, waiting for their turn. There's a certain kind of etiquette to, if there's somebody waiting, you talk, but don't take 3 hours. Eventually, get off the damn phone. There'd be fistfights every once in a while, but.
Do you have a favorite memory from your service?
Favorite memory? Yeah, I don't know if it's my favorite what comes to mind the most, but saying that and just thinking, I was assigned guard duty, and for me guard duty because of my position that I was in on the commander's vehicle, and being a corporal, I had radio duty, so I just had to go sit down and listen on the radio net for any traffic for us. And because it was Christmas Eve, I get a kick out of listening to them actually over the radios talking about anti-aircraft batteries were zeroing in on an unidentified flying object from the north, kind of stuff. It's like, oh God. I didn't wake anybody up. There were certain reliefs and shifts to go after me, but I didn't wake any of them. I just pulled the entire night by myself. I didn't wake anybody. That was my Christmas gift to my friends, was that I let them sleep through the night. And before the shift, me and another guy had walked around all the different vehicles and sang a different Christmas carol at each vehicle. And a couple guys were like, "Yay, thanks for the Christmas carol." One guy threw a boot at us and said, "There's no Christmas this year." And so we did the Christmas carol thing. Our commander his wife had said, there was no alcohol in Saudi Arabia, but people had figured out, a Pringles can fits 2 beers really nicely, and his wife had sent him Listerine, but it wasn't Listerine. So he'd been saving it, and we all got a shot of, I think it was Jack Daniels, from his Listerine bottle. And then did the carols, and then I stayed up that night. The next day was, our supply sergeant got steaks. We played football. We weren't allowed to do any kind of physical contact. We played football. And then Gerald McCraney and Delta Burke flew in to see us. So, and of course, I don't go to church much, but I went to the church service because I realized Christmas Day, I'd never been closer to Bethlehem in my entire life. So it was just I'm growing up with the Christmas trees and reindeer and snow when the real Christmas is sand. It was a sandstorm that day. So I remember that.
If you could, what advice would you give to those looking to join the military?
Oh, I don't know. The Marines, I don't know if, back in the early 90s when I went in, they had it. And I know why the Marine Corps does it, and I'm all for, I'm a former Marine, so I'm all about the Marine Corps. I just don't understand the logic of what they call open contracts. The Marines need the body. If they can't find a spot for you, they want you to still sign as an open contract. And I tell a lot of students, don't go in open contract. You get a job. Because if you're going open contract, they're going to give you the jobs they can't fill, which largely means jobs that nobody else wants. They suck. A lot of guys, I think, there used to be a thing that used to be you'd go in the infantry. A lot of guys want to join the Marine Corps. They go in the infantry, even if they want to be aircraft mechanics. I thought that the job that was horrible that they would assign open contracts to was cook. And I thought, well, you just joined the Marine Corps for 4 years to get up at 3 or 4 in the morning to make me waffles. So you're a Marine now, but I've been in hell if they'd done that to me. So I don't really dissuade. I mean, some people need the service. Some people, it's not good for them. I don't want to make that judgment, but I will tell those who are thinking about the Marines is you make sure you have got a job, not just go in open contract.
Well, I would like to thank you for your time, for this interview, and your service to our country.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.